Neil from Essex here to do a little bit of an inventory update for you today. Over the last 3 years or so, we've taken several opportunities, walked around the yard and talked about problems with supply chains, right? We're all probably sick of hearing that word by now. Heard it more in the last 3 years than I think I've ever heard it in my life. But there's a lot to talk about out here today, actually. The situation has changed quite a lot. You can see the amount of equipment behind me in these videos grows and grows and grows every time we put one up. There's a couple places here that we can actually still talk about some backlogs, but an interesting conversation to be had today about inventory levels and manufacturer programs and some aggressive pricing we're starting to see.
Essex, a helping hand with your land.
We're going to start with the negative news first, because that's always usually the most interesting, right? The positive stuff's not nearly as much fun as the pain that we all experience. We're going to start here with utility vehicles. Coming on the backside of the COVID, when people were at home, the utility vehicle market absolutely went nuts in ways that we have never seen before. And today we are starting to have a little bit of inventory of this kind of equipment again, but not as much as we would want. We're a far cry from having the normal, say, 6 to 8 months of supply sitting on our lot that we usually like to look for. For that reason, you're going to have some selection in models today. Machines like Kubota's RTV 1100 with the heat and the air conditioning, those we've got a couple of, but we still have basically no selection on machines like Sidekicks or 520s that continue to have a situation there where every machine arriving in our store is often spoken for in a lot of cases. So those lead times are shortening, but you may not find the variety that you are used to seeing from years gone by. Another pain point that we continue to have is compact track loaders and skid steers. We continue to have a significant backlog of customers looking for these machines. Our farmers, our contractors, the people that run so much of this equipment continue to have strong demand for this kind of machinery, and supply and demand have not kind of met up with each other yet. Kubota is really starting to churn out significant numbers now. We see a lot more deliveries than what we would have seen 6 months to a year ago. But the amount of interest for these machines continues to be really strong, and there is a waiting list still in order to be able to get one of these machines. So popular stuff. Talk to one of your salespeople. If you're looking for one of these, make sure you get your name in the system so that we have something to offer to you shortly. We've shared many times now that one of the product lines that held up the best for us was New Holland's equipment, specifically their hay tools that are manufactured right down the road from us with a surprisingly local supply chain. We have ample inventory of these pieces on our lot now. Now, the one thing that is definitely changing is a little bit more aggressive pricing, right? If you think about many of our manufacturers, this is not just New Holland, this is everybody that's out there today. When they were going through and you've seen inflation and prices rising and trucking issues, setting your price appropriately was a challenge, right? And I would say in a lot of cases, we may have seen some of these companies overestimate a little bit to give themselves a little bit of buffer room, pushing prices up more than what you and I might have expected. Now that inventories are returning to normal, we're starting to see program money, what we would call program money, right? Cash discounts, financing offers at a level that we haven't seen in a long time now. And I think that's a reflection of two things. It's a reflection of the inventory levels coming back, but there's also an aspect of that of giving some of the money back again in order to kind of right price that product's place in the market. So we're seeing that across many of our manufacturers. And the thing that excited us the most for New Holland was the return of a program that we call Value Bonanza. It's a year-end kind of a tax write-off program that we've had for a decade or so that we've come to rely on, and is now back for this year, which is really cool. So a lot of these companies are starting to step to the plate. If you've looked at equipment in the past 2-3 years here and kind of turned your nose up at the price, we've done that a little bit too, you might be surprised. It could be worth getting back in and taking a second look to see if it fits in your budget today. Next up is tractors. You know, tractors is a big product segment, right? There's a lot of different models out there to talk about, but today I would sit and say 80% of our product lines are back to normal again. We have our normal kind of 6 months, 8 months worth of inventory sitting back on our lots again. You have plenty to pick from, and deliveries can happen in a timely manner. Now, the other 20% of those that I would say hasn't come out as quickly as we would like, or the availability is not as good as what it could be, tends to be in the newer models. Machines like Kubota's LX20 are not coming as quickly as we might like, We have the older ones around still at a little bit cheaper price. Your big ag tractors, when you're talking up above 200 horsepower or so, much of that market remains kind of a situation where you need to pre-order those tractors and get your names on them before they arrive, because we're not getting the volumes of inventory that we could potentially sell in the big equipment. Next up is Kubota's SCO 1000, their new standalone track loader that came out 3 years ago. This is just now the very first time I can look around this lot and say we have actual new standing inventory available, so you can come in and buy one of these today. What the market did with these machines over the last 2 or 3 years has just been kind of unreal. Seeing machines bought by people and flipped on auctions for $5,000 and $6,000 premiums over the price of a new one. A used market for these things, it just defies explanation. I don't know. All of that should come to an end now, because new machines are available again, and that pricing that you've seen out there is kind of going to normalize again. So again, it's one of these things, if your pricing reference point has been what you've seen over the last 2 years or so, you might be surprised when you come in and start looking at new equipment again. Now, as we've seen the pace of new equipment arrivals increase and normalize, many of those sales now are involving trade-ins again. And so you're going to notice used equipment levels are kind of come back to what their normal used to be in years that have gone by. Used machinery continues to be a really good value. Again, in some cases where new equipment has become more expensive than it used to be, you can save some significant money looking into the used market for some other options. And we continue to have really healthy turns. Machines aren't sitting on the ground very long around here. They tend to come in and out pretty quickly. But you're going to see overall the volume of equipment out here has increased, and there are many more shopping opportunities than what you may have had a year or two ago. I'm going to make the same statement again about the auction markets or things float around on Facebook Marketplace. My goodness, when we look out there and watch people asking new prices for machines that are just a year or two old, that kind of market for that kind of equipment is gone by this point, right? Those opportunities to be able to flip machines that way have passed, because there is the availability again in the used market. Another correction that we have seen is in attachment availability. Many attachments are built with certain commodity parts, right? Things like bearings and shafts and blades, stuff that often comes from overseas. And when that supply chain was disrupted, attachment companies had a hard time providing us with all the attachments that were needed for the machines that were going out the door. That has now largely changed. So when you look across our lots here, you're going to see a healthy and thorough selection of all the attachments that you could want for your equipment. I've been noticing mostly positive economic news here at this point. This video is being made after the point now that the Fed started talking about the fact that they're going to start lowering interest rates here in the next couple of months, and that a soft landing that they've talked about, we've all kind of like joked about, yeah, right, might actually come about. But there is a pain point that we're noticing out there in the market. I buy repossessed tractors. We don't often have enough trade-ins, enough used inventory to meet the demand that's out there for them. And so we do buy repossessions periodically in order to augment our own used inventory. The amount of repossessions that are on those auctions, I would say, has increased. Now, increased by the amount of, say, we're going from 15 a week to 20 a week, right? It's not like all of a sudden millions of people are turning in their tractors, but there has been a notable increase in the amount that are out there. And the one thing that I have noticed is maybe a potential increase in the very, very low hour machines. Something like this L3302 that we just picked up, and it came through with only 30 hours on it and was purchased by its original owner only 6 months ago. So I can't imagine the amount of payments that actually could have been made against that machine. So some of that is happening. And again, there's always been a repossession market out there. We've bought from it from a long time now, but there may be a little bit of an increase in it. And if you're shopping for a piece of equipment, these oftentimes are some of the best deals that are out here in our parking lot. Another thing that's changed in the used inventory is the availability now of compact track loaders, skid steers, and excavators. If you look here over the last 2 years, when the new machines were hard to get, these were some of the hardest hit on the new market. When we were selling used machines, contractors were very hesitant about giving a trade-in, right? They were hanging on to their trade-ins, continuing to run those machines in their fleet, and that led to even fewer machines out there on the used market, and that is starting to change today. Again, we talked about how the lead time, still backed up, but the lead time time is starting to drop again, and we're starting to see some of these trade-ins pop back onto our lots again. So in summary, it's a great time to start looking for a piece of equipment again, right? The availability has come back on the new and the used market. On the new side, we're starting to see some aggressiveness from our manufacturers again to try to find customers and try to get things sold. It's refreshing for us as salespeople to be running after those deals now rather than continuously managing wait lists. That was not fun. And we're happy to kind of be going back to something that looks like some resemblance of normal again. So this is the last video that we're gonna make on this topic. I've got 5 acres of equipment out here to stop and take a look at, and we'd be glad to help you out. So if you're shopping for a piece of equipment and we can help, or if you got parts and service needs for a machine you've already got, give us a call at Messick's. We're available at 800-222-3373 or online at Messick's.com. I'll throw a nugget to those of you that, what do they say? If you're the doom and gloom type,